Welcome back to another episode of Silent Pals Go to the Movies. This is another Throwback Thursday review, and I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hey, guys.
And today we're going to be reviewing Shaun of the Dead. And just fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. A man's uneventful life is disturbed by the zombie apocalypse. Going down the cast, we have Simon Pegg as Shaun. We have Kate Ashfield as Liz. We got Nick Frost as Ed, Lucy Davis as Diane, Dylan Morin as David, Nicola Cunningham as Mary, Penelope Walton as Barbara. We have Jessica Hines as Yvonne. We have Bill Knightley as Philip. And we also have the director, Ed Wright. And both Ed Wright and Simon Pegg wrote this script. So seeing that this is Touly's pick for the month of Halloween, I'm going to throw it to Touly so he can start his review.
First and foremost, I decided to pick this film because when Sal wanted to do an October Halloween throwback movie watch, he asked me to pick out a film and he gave me a lot of freedom in terms of what I considered scary. But I decided to go on a more lighter route in terms of the movie I picked. So I went with Shaun of the Dead because it has a more light-sided aspect to it in terms of its comedy side incorporation in tangent with The Living Dead. We have reviewed a zombie film before on Sal's podcast. I believe it was Night of the Living Dead. I am a big fan of zombie flicks or TV series. Like always, this film and some of the other zombie films I've seen, it does a good job at telling a story about a man or whomever the main character is and blending it with the zombie environment, but not making so much about the zombie, but making that scenario bring out the character's fault and see how this character goes through this journey of rectifying themselves, being better as a person, or just dealing with situations that they weren't aware with to begin with because they're so engrossed in other matters, or maybe they just don't see it, in hindsight of it all. So I think Shaun of the Dead, to me, one of the aspects I really liked about this film was what they did with Simon Pegg's character Shaun, right from the get-go. The movie was only an hour and 40 minutes long and I thought personally, for the most part, they took advantage of almost every single minute that was on screen to sort of tell the story that they wanted to tell. And right off the gate, they already introduced us to Simon's character and his girlfriend and the sort of problems he was facing in terms of trying to keep the relationship together because he wasn't able to keep promises. The issues that his girlfriend, Liz, had against Nick Frost, who played Ed in the film. So they already introduced a lot of the things that this character was dealing with. So I really liked that because they weren't dawdling around. It's like, okay, so they're just going to give us the scenario right off the bat. And then we see him go through like a daily routine. And this was actually one of my favorite parts of the film where it really showcased how oblivious he was to his environment. It even started when he woke up, for the day's work. He thought he had time to play video games with Ed, and Ed had to remind him that he had to work. How Shaun then just went down to the store, encountered all these situations all the way down where from getting hit by a soccer ball, I believe, to tripping on the street curb. All these things that really you had to pay attention in order to appreciate what happened later. Because then when the zombie apocalypse hit and you see him going through the same path, but seeing these characters that were there that he encountered or just being there in the background, and how Shaun didn't realize that the situation was different, how far off he was from reality. And it's a great portrayal of where he was in his life, the mindset that he had. It wasn't until really another character in this film who was a roommate of Shaun and Ed, who didn't really like Ed because Ed, he felt like, was holding Shaun back from his potential. And it wasn't until he gave him a good yelling that Shaun wanted to be better. And I guess he was trying to prove himself that way from when the zombie apocalypse hit, starting from, just helping Ed himself escape their home quarters, trying to find a safe haven, going out to help Liz, and I guess in a sense her friends as well, David and Diane. And at the same time, just mixing in a lot of comedies as well. You normally don't expect a lot of these stuff in a zombie film, but I thought it fit really well. Like, it was very natural, at least for the most part. I mean, I'll talk about the cons in a bit, but I think for the most part, they were taking stabs at situations that you would find characters in a zombie film or TV series. Even having the news reporter saying stuff like, don't go out of the house, stay inside safer. Or at one point when Shaun was just flipping through the channels, then they had, or whomever television personality was on the screen, saying a word, and it sort of outcome to like a sentence as it was slipping through the channel saying that people were getting attacked. It was like a sense of warning. A lot of foreshadowing in this film too, very direct. They were talking about at one point, I think it was David who didn't like Shaun's best friend, Ed, that maybe she should just go back and live in a shed or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was David who said that, or it might have been Liz. It so happened at the end of the film, Ed was actually living in a shed because he got turned into a zombie. I guess Shaun didn't want to lose his best friend, so he kept him tied up in the back, and I guess every so often he goes back and play video games with him. So I thought that was kind of neat how things came in full circle like that. The comedy, like I said, it was pretty good for its implementation into a zombie film. It felt very natural until Shaun and Ed's plan were to find a safe haven. So they decided to go to this pub that they normally go to, but they wanted to bring along Liz and in tangent Diane and David, and then also go bring Shaun's mom Barbara as well, who was a major character in this film in terms of Shaun's development as a character. So you see them go through this ordeal of getting to each of these characters' places, rescuing them, the sort of situations you would deal with in a zombie film when you have a certain person trying to go out and find somebody and rescue them. The only big difference is really the comedy aspect that they throw into the film, particularly when it's from Ed's perspective. The thing about his character is he seems to be, I mean, for the lack of terms, a loser. He's very lazy. He doesn't have as much motivation compared to Shaun, and Shaun himself is not really motivated to begin with, but Ed seems to be the person who's messed up a lot. There was this one point where he crashed the vehicle that they were in, and so they had to find this other vehicle who belonged to Shaun's stepdad, who he didn't get along with. So there was that dynamic or that relationship that he had to work through as well with his stepdad, and he eventually was able to work something out with him that made the feeling mutual or happy feeling, but that came at the cost of his stepdad dying. It's the same thing with his mom later in the movie when she ended up revealing that she got bit and then she got turned, and then Shaun ended up having to shoot her because it was either her or them because they were all trapped in the pub together. I felt for Shaun for the struggle that he went through, but other than him, I would say the only other character who I was kind of behind was actually David, who turned out to be like the douchebaggy sort of character in this film because he was the more logical sort of character. Like he was speaking in a lot of sense, and that kind of rubbed the other characters in the wrong way. He had his motives as well, but he sort of reminded me of Shane in a way from The Walking Dead. Like for example, when you got to the point where Shaun's mom Barbara turned, and he was the one saying that, you know, we have to get rid of her, otherwise she's going to turn, or she is already turning, and she's going to come after us. But everybody else except for him was not grasping the bigger picture. They were all pinning this on David as saying, oh, you're only doing this because you don't like Shaun, or you're doing this because, or you're only in this group right now because you are in love with Liz, but she turned you down, and that's why you're only here still though, you know. So they're kind of turning it back against him. But I really appreciated his character because he was the only other character who was kind of like on the extreme side from where Shaun was at that made me feel something about the character. So in a way, I wish instead of him dying, he should have just like escaped somehow. Like Diane, who was the individual who was in love with David, she ran after him after David got torn apart by the zombies. And it wasn't shown in this film, but I believe like in the bonus feature of like the DVD or the Blu-ray, they showed that Diane survived the horde of zombies that she ran into. So that's a little extra fact for you guys who haven't seen like the bonus footage. But yeah, starting from the hub kind of onward, a lot of the stuff that happened felt too forced. Things like when the jukebox started playing one of Queen's song, and then they were hitting one of the zombies in the hub with the cue sticks, and they were hitting it to the tune of the song, like the beat felt very forced. Like it didn't come natural. Like they were trying too hard to iconicize, I guess, the song and make it seem very musical, very epic like. And they even had like the lights flashing outside where like the horde of zombies were, trying to representing like the fans going to a concert and cheering and stuff like that. So things like that I wasn't a big fan of because the movie was doing such a great job up to that point, making things flow very, very well. And I didn't feel anything being too forced down our throat versus the first half where they were setting up Shaun's character and how he went through his daily routine and how everything sort of naturally fell together, even with the comedy. And just the idea of them getting to the hub, like they had no plan to get inside the hub because it was being guarded or it was getting blockaded by the horde of zombie. So they thought, you know what, let's just try to act as zombie and make our way through. And the zombies fell for it really until they got to the front of the door where things just fell apart. So I wish they would have been able to get into the hub in a more quote unquote realistic way instead of resorting to this very false plan that I expect nobody would believe could happen. Yeah, just give me something else else, really. Like the part where Shaun led this group of zombies away from the entrance and then everybody just could, go inside. Maybe they should have just gone that route, really, instead of doing this whole scheme of them acting like zombies, because that was just too goofy. Like it was too off the radar for me to like buy into. Yeah, there was just a lot of banter when they're in the hub, not a lot of things going on. And I wish really some of the moments Shaun shared with his mom and his stepdad and even Ed, really, I wish there were more on a personal level, like they were just alone with them versus him experiencing those moments as a group. Like the conversation he had with his stepdad before his stepdad turned into a zombie. They were holding that conversation in the car where everybody was present, and there were like 7 or 8 of them in that car. Again, going back to the idea of believability, it didn't seem reasonable for them to not be a part of this conversation despite the camera just being on Shaun and his stepdad. Rather than have it in that sort of a situation, I rather prefer it just them alone together somewhere else. The same thing with his mom. Everybody was there to see what happened versus I wish it was just between Shaun and his mom. I didn't really think any of the characters being there add any weight to it, really. The way I sum up this film, it was a film of 2 halves. First half was really, really good. The setup was great. Everything felt natural. It flowed pretty well. The comedy, it fit in pretty good. The foreshadowing was good. But once they reached the hub, it was like, okay, I guess maybe they ran out of ideas, or I don't know if they were drawing inspiration from anything at that point, but it felt like they were just there. And it's just like Shaun's plan. There was nothing after that. They were just there and they were arguing, bickering, and dealing with the zombies that were trying to get into the hub. And Shaun and Liz just happened to escape because they ran into, like, I guess their doppelganger earlier in this film by this character played by Jessica Hines. She was also leading a group, and it was supposed to be some sort of comedy aspect where they were like the doppelganger of Shaun's group, but I think they fared well, or they fared better because they had like a plan, because she was kind of shocked when she found out from Shaun where they were heading versus going somewhere that would probably make more sense in this sort of situation. And so later she arrived with like a bunch of soldiers and they pretty much demolished all the zombies near the hub, and that's how Shaun and Liz ended up escaping. It wasn't really Shaun's idea that they ended up escaping. Pretty much one of those serendipity thing where he kind of lucked out and him and Liz ended up living. At least the movie ended up with one of those good feeling thing where Shaun is still treating Ed as a real human, and they're doing something that they were doing already when Ed was still alive, and that was playing video games. So I guess in a way the movie came in full circle. But was it one of my favorite zombie films of all time? I wouldn't say it's like the best, but I would say it's still one of my favorite because of its unique style of direction in terms of comedy implementation and the camera style, like very, very dynamic. It was one of the earliest films, if not the first film, that I seen Simon Pegg's work, and I became a fan of him after seeing this movie. So I guess it was a great movie for me to kind of get introduced to Simon Pegg.
I also agree with you that this movie fell into this comedy, but then the first part was a really well set up, and then at the end it was kind of wrapping everything up. They could have taken a little better approach to it. But touching back on some things that you said, the whole reference to Night of the Living Dead, directed by George Romero, they actually put a line in this movie and they screened it for him at his Florida house. And the line when Ed says, "We're coming to get you, Barbara," that's a reference to the Night of the Living Dead. And I like how they put all these little things as homage to George Romero, because he's the father of the zombies. In this movie, it's little things that you see here and there that kind of make this movie, like, I won't say it is the best movie like you said, but I'm saying it's a good movie. It's a good comedy zombie movie that makes fun of the situation. The same way you touched upon the TV as he's flicking through the channels, and it's basically making a full sentence saying what's going on. And Shaun is the guy who's like, he's just really close-minded. He just sees what he wants to do that day, and that's it. He doesn't see what's going on, and we see that when he woke up the day of the zombie and walking through the zombies and everything. He's oblivious to this, and especially his relationship with Liz. You touched upon that, which was perfectly done. The thing about the doppelgangers, when I saw that, I thought it was brilliant, because most of these people who are on the other side are characters from a show called Spaced, and it's Simon Pegg is a character there, and it was written by Edgar Wright. And these people, just to be there is kind of a little like Easter egg for fans of that TV show. Another movie that recently that I saw them doing, or actually I saw it in a trailer, it's Zombieland Double Tap, when they're meeting their doppelgangers. And I'm like, wait, this looks familiar. Before we watched this movie all over again, I'm like, where did I see this? Where did I see this? And it popped out that it was from here. The same way you were mentioning that some of the things here remind you of The Walking Dead. I can allude to that too by the fact where when they get to the pub and they're walking through the zombies, I don't know why, but I want to say that The Walking Dead took that and ran with it by just dressing the characters from The Walking Dead with the guts of the zombies to basically camouflage them. And I'm like, this is kind of like the Simon Pegg route, you know? And I think that they're fans because all of them on The Walking Dead are fans of George Romero, and George Romero is, you know, was a fan of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. So everything comes in full circle for me as a zombie fan. Another thing, all the one-liners and, like you said, all the foreshadowing in the movie, especially some of the lines like "you got red on you" at the beginning, it meant that he had the red ink on his shirt, but later it was referencing that it was going to be blood that was on him. And Ed basically told him when they're sitting down, he's like, hey, you got red on you, after they killed the zombies from the backyard. Also, when he's going the first day to go to the liquor store or the store across the street, and he tells the kid with the soccer ball, you're dead. And that's like basically telling us indirectly, like, these are going to be characters that are going to die, or this is going to happen. Also, I think it's Ed who says, next time I see him, he's dead, referring to his roommate when he comes down and starts telling him to stop playing loud music. And I'm like, this is like foreshadowing. It's comical, but at the same time, it's there to basically tell you, hey, laugh at this movie, but just keep focused, you know? As far as other examples that Touly said rubbed him the wrong way about the jukebox, I thought the jukebox was kind of funny. This thing, like every time they try to get serious, a joke came in and they started a joke or made fun of something. The jukebox playing the Chicago song when he's like depressed. Shaun, who says, who put that? And then Ed says it's on random. And the same thing that happened when they're in the pub again at the end with the zombies, and the jukebox pops up with the Queen song. They're saying the same line again. Who put that on? And then Ed comes in and is like, it's on random. Another thing that I want to just talk really quick about is this whole movie came inspired from an episode from the show that I mentioned called Space. The episode was entitled Art. And Tim, it's a character who's played by Simon Pegg on the show. He hallucinates that he's in a zombie apocalypse and he's facing the zombies when he's playing Resident Evil 2. And I think he's under the influence of drugs or something. And this whole episode just focused on him hallucinating this situation of a zombie invasion. And Edgar Wright basically told him or pitched the idea of making that episode into a full-length movie. Zombie comedy, if you say. I liked how they did this by actually putting Simon Pegg's character in a relationship and evolving from what he used to be to a better person. I'm not saying that he ended up being a better person at the end, but I'm saying that he did change his ways. He's open now. He's, you know, allowed to see where he is, who's next to him and everything. At the same time, like Touly said, keep his friends Ed by his side. So with that, I'm going to go on to some of my cons really quick. One of the cons that I really didn't like about this, like Touly probably already mentioned, was the end. It was too fast paced and it just tried to wrap everything up together. I would have liked it a little more character development on the side of, like they said, of David and Liz and stuff like that. Also, Barbara and Shaun, if they could have had a little time together at the end, just sit down at the pub and talk about what was going on. And like, you know, the same thing that Touly said, Shaun and his stepfather, Philip. You know, that situation would have made more sense if it wasn't just in that confined space. You know, I know what they were going for. It's like, it's comedy, but at the same time, it's a touching scene and everything, but it would have touched audience better if it was secluded and just by themselves. Situations like that. So with that, I'm going to send it off to Touly and see what grade he gives this movie.
Overall, I still really enjoyed the film. If you're looking for a fun comedy zombie film, then I would still highly recommend watching this if you haven't seen it yet. Yeah, so because of that, I'm going to give this film a 7 out of 10. I don't come back and rewatch this film too often, but I do rewatch it from time to time. There were a lot of stuff they showcased in the trailer. First time I saw this film was at the theater, so I came aware of it from watching the trailer. And they showed this part where Shaun was hopping over the fence. I'm not sure if you guys remember that, for those who did watch it back then. But I think it was in that scene alone that really motivated me to go watch this film. Aside from it just being a zombie film and knowing that it's a comedy. I don't know, for some reason that scene really gravitated towards the sense of comedy that I kind of like. And it's funny because then when I watch Hot Fuzz, which is another film which Simon Pegg was in, they sort of played tribute to this fence moment again. I don't know, it just speaks to how they blended this comedy into the seriousness of the situation, but at the same time being able to poke fun at it. I think this movie did a good job at doing that. I just wish the follow through was better. It was okay. Again, like Sal said, it felt rushed, but at least things wrapped up neatly with Shaun and Ed still being together at the end. So I would say just a little glip there when they reach the pub and things that happened at the pub, at least for my taste. But other than that, I think everything leading up to it and that little ending we got between Shaun and Ed, I appreciate it. And again, for an hour and 40-minute movie, I thought that was terrific too, because I feel like a lot of movies today, and it's starting to trend towards the horror sort of flicks too. They tended to be like around 2 hours now. And so I feel like if they were to just back up a little bit and take away certain scenes that I think I normally would complain about in a horror flick if it's too long, it would be around this hour 30 to hour 40 minutes range, where you just need to tell and show what you need to tell and show, and hopefully we come out feeling this sense of, hey, the movie was pretty good. And overall I still feel that way about this film.
Okay, so for me, I'm just going to basically touch upon that if you like this movie, check out other movies by Edgar Wright, especially like Touly said, Hot Fuzz and The World's End with Shaun of the Dead. That's a perfect trilogy of his work. There's other movies that he's done that are more serious and stuff like that, like for example, Baby Driver and stuff like that. But to me, Shaun of the Dead is a perfect movie to watch during Halloween that has a Halloween theme in it, but at the same time won't scare you. So it's a nice movie to watch after going out trick-or-treating with the kids, coming back and just relaxing and watching this. If you have kids, this is a good movie to go the route if they're kind of a little older and they appreciate comedy. For me, this movie is going to get a solid 8 out of 10, and the reason is because I really love the way they implemented the homage to George Romero, and to basically have a movie making fun but at the same time honoring old movies and saying, hey, you know, this is a movie that's an homage to that movie, but in a sort of hilarious way. And like I always come to the thing, if you love something so much that you can basically poke fun of it, then you're a true fan. And for me, this is the perfect movie that encapsulates that zombie genre. To me, I can watch this movie any day. So that does it for this review of Shaun of the Dead. Please join us next time when we review my pick, The Shining.
Here's Johnny!
Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, you can find our social media links down below. And like always, keep watching movies.